Good evening and welcome to the Great Maya Aquifer. I'm Carla Munguia, ambassador for this project founded by Guillermo de Anda to explore, understand, and protect this unique and important underground water system in the Yucatan Peninsula. This year, we are celebrating the International Year of Caves and Karst, a worldwide event organized by the International Union of Speleology. Explorers, scientists, cave divers, archaeologists, underwater archaeologists, biologists, photographers, speleologists, videographers, cartographers, educators, and conservationists around the world will share their adventures, discoveries, and anecdotes all year round. And Mexico is not the exception. Today, I'm honored to present two speakers to begin our celebration. Dr. George Benny and Dr. Guillermo de Anda, two of the most important cave, karst, and cenote explorers in the world. But before they join us in this live broadcast, I would like to thank our sponsors: National Geographic Society, the Government of Switzerland, the National Institute of Anthropology and History, and Dive Right. Now, if I may, I'm going to speak Spanish briefly and quickly. Muy buenas noches a todos, bienvenidos al Gran Acuífero Maya. Esta conferencia se irá en inglés, trataremos de traducir lo más que se pueda al español, pero no se preocupen a todos nuestros seguidores que como cada martes se unen a estas conferencias, les prometemos que tendremos esta conferencia con subtítulos para que por favor puedan aprender y explorar con el Dr. Benny y el Dr. Guillermo de Anda. Voy a regresar al inglés otra vez. So please, Dr. Benny and Dr. De Anda, if you can join me on the screen so people can see you, and welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'm sure that people from around the world will learn about these important sites. So good evening, Dr. Guillermo de Anda and Dr. George. How are you?
Hello, how are you? I'm very glad to be here. George, welcome.
It's always good to be with good friends, and especially talking about and exploring caves. So,
yes.
Yeah. So thank you for the invitation.
Thank you to both of you. Just a quick reminder to everyone watching us. You can send all your questions or comments to both experts. I will be reading them all, and then I'm going to pick some of them so they can answer your questions. So, who is Dr. George Benny? Well, he actually likes to be called Jorge. So, who is Dr. George Benny? He is a man whose passion for caves and karst has taken him to the most remote and hidden places on our planet. He is executive director of the National Cave and Karst Research Institute, as well as president of the International Union of Speleology. His work as an hydrogeologist specialized in caves and karst terrains has led him to conduct extensive research throughout the United States and in several countries, Mexico being one of them. In 2019, Dr. Benny joined Dr. Jim Brady and Dr. Guillermo de Anda to explore and research caves in the Yucatan Peninsula and Chichen Itza. Today, Dr. Benny is part of the Great Maya Aquifer project team as head hydrogeologist. He has vital information to share with us today, so I suggest you pay attention and get ready to explore the wonders of caves and karst. Welcome, George.
Thank you very much. What I've prepared and what I was asked to prepare was some slides that show the history of my life. This is the first time I'm doing this, which tells me that I'm old because people don't ask you to go over your life history when you're young. So if Carla will start the slides, and we can start talking a little bit about where I've been and how I've reached where I am now. So
perfect.
Yeah. Okay. So this is part of the Guadalupe Mountains in Texas and New Mexico. Boy, this is in 1975. I went there to start climbing mountains. I didn't know anything about climbing mountains, but I was young, I was excited, and I went there. I climbed around. It's amazing I didn't kill myself. But then nearby, there was this thing called Carlsbad Cavern. I never thought about what a cave was, but it was a national park. So I thought it must be important. So I went and looked at it and I fell in love. Next slide, please. Next. There we go. So quickly I became involved with the caving clubs in San Antonio, Texas, which was home. Um, I learned caving skills. I learned to rappel, how to climb. Next slide, please. Okay. I started building additional skills like cave diving. This is with my good friend, late friend, sadly, Randy Waters. We did some important cave diving in Texas, um, and so I was starting to build my skills as a caver. Next slide, please. Perhaps one of the most important discoveries for me was made in West Texas. And this is in a cave called Sorcerer's Cave at the bottom of the cave. Randy, who was my best friend, and Gary Poole, who was my other best friend, the three of us discovered the deepest cave in Texas. And we didn't just break the depth record, but we found an underground stream. We explored over 1,000 meters down the stream passage, and it was so fabulous, not just the exploration and the discovery, but doing that, having that special moment with my best friends. It literally changed my life. My parents were trying to convince me to move and do some other things, to go away from caving, things that would have taken me away. But this convinced me that no, caves are my life. So here we are. Next slide. My first trip to Mexico was in 1976, mostly in northern Mexico. In 1979, I went a bit further south. This is in the state of Hidalgo, just north of Mexico City, a cave called Grutas de Tolantongo. The water is 40 degrees Celsius. It is an amazingly strange cave. You look at this waterfall, and it's water forcefully coming out of the ceiling like someone put a fire hydrant up there. The force can knock you over if you're not careful. This really spurred my interest in cave science, and so I became a student in geology. And one of my student projects was to understand why this water is so warm and many of the other unusual features in this cave. Next, please. Soon after, in 1984, I was invited by my good friend Logan McNatt to go down to Belize to be part of the Chiquibul project. You can see some tents down in the middle lower part of the photo, some people there in our campground. We were exploring what was at the time the largest cave, and I think it may still be the largest cave system in terms of volume in the Western Hemisphere. So it was a fabulous opportunity to go down there and do just amazing exploration with a group of excellent trained speleologists. Next, please. Also in 1994, I was a student at that point at Western Kentucky University. Um, Western Kentucky University is in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and there were amazingly serious, dangerous problems with Karst groundwater under the city. So this is my friend Gary Schindel, who's now the chief scientist with the Edwards Aquifer Authority. And we're going through the cave. The black stuff you see are oils, grease, sewage. We tested the water and found over 14 carcinogenic chemicals in excess of drinking water standards in this cave system. And so, working with our professor, Dr. Nick Crawford, we began a series of projects to help minimize and reduce the pollution and problems, environmental problems in Karst in the city of Bowling Green. Next, please. Well, when I went on that Chiquibul expedition, I met Dr. Andrea Stone, and who's here on the left. And Andrea invited me to work with her on a number of projects, including to go to Naktonich with Dr. Jim Brady on the right. So here we are. I think this is the only photo. This may be one of the few photos of the three of us together, examining the maps before we go out to visit Nachtunich in Guatemala for the very first time, my very first time at least. Jim and Andrea had been there. An incredibly important cave in Maya cultural history and in cave archaeology in general. Next, please. Additionally, I had the privilege of working with Andrea on another project. She wrote a book, Images from the Underworld, on Maya cave art. And so in this figure, this is from Actunchon in Yucatan, Mexico. It's a little ways north of the cave of Loltun, for those of you who know that. You can see a seated figure on the left, a captive figure with his arms tied behind him on the right, and then someone who's presenting the captive to the ruler who's sitting on the left. So we went and studied many caves that had cave art, especially in Yucatan. And this was my first time. This was actually in 1986. My first time really working in the Yucatan Peninsula. Next, please. After I finished my master's thesis, I went to Penn State University to work on my PhD. But my thesis area, my dissertation area, was back in Texas. This is some equipment I had in Honey Creek Cave, which is the longest cave in Texas, currently surveyed at over 33 kilometers in length, monitoring water levels in the cave. Next slide. Additionally, I ended up creating my own consulting company, George Venny and Associates. I was privileged to work with many excellent cavers and cave scientists to study caves and environmental problems in Texas and other areas around the country. We did hydrogeologic studies. We worked with endangered species, cultural materials, paleontology. In many cases, such as this one, and this is an extreme example, we would find small depressions, small sinkholes. This was a small sinkhole, a doline, that was maybe 30 centimeters in diameter and 30 centimeters deep. But I knew that there had to be a large cave underneath. And so we started digging. And sure enough, we found a substantial cave down below. Next, please. As time went on, I did have opportunities to do some teaching. I taught a number of classes then for Western Kentucky University. They have a summer field program, mostly taught at Mammoth Cave in Kentucky, the world's longest cave. But I taught my classes first in northern Mexico. I also taught some, of course, in Texas. But then Jim Brady and I taught one on the Karst geoarchaeology of the Yucatan. And this is from the cenote at the site of Zibichaltun, just north of Merida. Next, please. In 2001, I had the honor of joining David McKenzie, who's shown here, to survey the amazing cave called Actuncawa in the state of Yucatan. Cawa is, I believe, the longest cave in the Yucatan Peninsula. I'm sorry, in the state of Yucatan. It has 10.4 kilometers of passage. And unlike many caves in Mexico, which are large, deep, this cave is shallow and small, but it is the most complicated maze cave, the most dense series of passages that I've ever seen anywhere in the world. This photo shows the maze extending off to the west, where it lies mostly unexplored. And I hope the next time I'm down there to continue the exploration. But much of the cave, all of the cave that we've been through was explored by the ancient Maya. So maybe someday we'll go further than where they went. Next, please. The next year in 2002, I was again honored by being asked to join the Bureau, the governing board of the International Union of Speleology. The UIS, as it's called, is essentially the United Nations of cave exploration and cave science countries. This photo was taken during our meeting in Beirut, Lebanon in 2006. It shows Bureau members and also a number of other friends from the area. Next, please. The following year, in 2007, another great honor where I was asked to be the executive director of the National Cave and Karst Research Institute. And this brings my story full circle because the Institute is located in Carlsbad, New Mexico, very close to Carlsbad Cavern. I got my start, I got my inspiration in Carlsbad Cavern, and now my career ends back in the Carlsbad area. In this photo, I'm holding a drawing of our headquarters building. This was during our groundbreaking for the construction. And this year, we will celebrate the anniversary of 10 years in our headquarters in Carlsbad, New Mexico. Next, please. I've also been very fortunate to work with many excellent students around the world. While I'm not a formal professor by teaching regularly at a university, I've served on many thesis and dissertation committees. For example, here is one of my former students in Greece, Miljana Golubovic-Deliani, who invited me to serve on her committee there. One of the things I've also enjoyed, though, not just with students, but with my caving over the years, is that my best friends, my closest ties have been with cavers. And so people like Miljana here are family now. We started as a professor-student relationship, but now, it's much closer. And I feel that way strongly with many of my caving friends. And so what's one of the things that keeps me so interested and involved with caves is, again, the people that I work with. Next, please. Through my work at the National Cave and Karst Research Institute, I've continued to build other international relationships. For example, I'm here with the executive director of the International Research Center on Karst, located in Guilin, China, where we signed a memorandum of agreement between our two institutes. Next, please. And that brings us pretty much to the present. On January 26th of this year, I was part of the opening ceremonies. And this is a photo from the opening ceremonies of the International Year of Caves and Karst. Caves and karst are incredibly important around the world, even for people who don't live in karst areas. Everyone benefits. Everyone is touched in some way by caves and karst. But most people don't know what they are, why they're important. Most people have never heard of the word karst. And so the purpose of the International Year is to teach the world about their importance and their value. As Carla said at the beginning, explore, understand, protect. You cannot protect something unless you understand what it is, and you can't understand it unless you explore it first. Next, please. The most important person in my life, who unfortunately doesn't get much mention, is my wife. My wife, Karen. I don't spend nearly as much time as I'd like to with her. She doesn't go caving as much as she used to, but we still go out whenever we can together, and we both enjoy going out looking at rock art in rock shelters and caves, going hiking. So we just got back 2 weeks ago from a trip to Big Bend National Park here in the U.S., looking at some rock art. This is not from there. This is another area, but I can't do a talk without explaining or recognizing the most wonderful person in my life. Next, please. And just to close, in August of 2019, as Carla mentioned, I was with Guillermo, Jim Brady, and many others of the Gran Acuífero Maya project, working in Chichen Itza. In 1986, I said that was my first time in Yucatan, and I went to Chichen, and I stood at the base of this temple. The photo is on the top of the temple. It looks like flat ground in the photo, but I'm at the top of the temple. I stood at the bottom and I saw a sign that says there's a cave below this temple. You go to the top of the temple and then you rappel down through an opening at the top about 9 meters, and then you continue rappelling about 14 meters down into the cave. I looked at that and I thought, I'll never get to see that. Who am I? And then 33 years later, it happened, and I was going down there. But I was going there for a reason. It wasn't just to be a tourist, it was to see what information I could get out of this cave as a hydrogeologist to look at it. When I first started caving, I was taught that caving is not a right, caving is a privilege. And I still carry that with me. I still believe that. And so, as part of that privilege, is why we're organizing, the UIS is organizing, and why I'm spending so much time with the International Year of Caves and Karst. It's a privilege that deserves to be paid back. It's a privilege that deserves to be properly honored. So that's an overview of my history. I thank you for your attention. I hope to have many more years, good years of caving, and we'll turn it over to Guillermo and then answer questions later. Thank you.
Thank you, Jorge. Thank you. Thank you. I want to quickly say hello to the people that are watching us around Mexico. The first one is Juan Luis Martinez Guzman. He says to you, receive greetings, all the GAM team from Mexico City. There's people from Tulum sending greetings to Anthony Cruz Rios, Guillermo Fran from Puerto Morelos, and Joel. He's always on time on our online talks. So thank you everyone for being with us. And hi to LNDM Fabi also. Now it's time to go with Guillermo de Anda. Thank you, Dr. Jorge. We will see you in a bit. So who is Guillermo de Anda? Now it is time to explore with him. He is director of the Great Maya Aquifer Project and an underwater archaeologist and explorer that has entered the Mayan underworld for more than 30 years. He's also a researcher for the National Institute of Anthropology and History in Mexico, and explorer for National Geographic Society. In 2015, he founded the Great Maya Aquifer to explore, understand, and protect this vital underground water system in the Yucatan Peninsula. Get yourself ready to discover and be impressed by the wonders that he will share with you today. Welcome, Guillermo.
Thank you very much, Carla. Muchas gracias. Bienvenidos todos. Qué bueno que están aquí nuestros buenos amigos.
All right. La pantalla. It's all yours, the screen.
Thank you very much. So, first of all, I have to acknowledge the fact that we have Dr. George Benny here tonight, and it's quite an honor and a privilege. George, along with Jim Brady, had been two of my most important inspirations and mentors for the work we're doing. So we owe a lot to them. Now I have the privilege of sharing with my good dear friend George to do the research at the Great Mayan Aquifer Project. He's our head hydrogeologist, and we are super happy and proud of having him here. So I cannot emphasize enough how good it is to have him. And now in this year of caves and karst, it's super important to talk about the real importance of caves. Some people ask me, well, why do you go to these dark places? Why do you go to these flooded caves, which are dangerous, etc., etc.? Well, we go there because it's a quest. It's a quest to understand our world better. It's a quest to protect one of the most important elements that exist in the planet, the karsts. The karsts have a very, very important role in our everyday lives. George, maybe in another talk, can tell us about that importance. So they are not important only for the survival of our species, if that were not important enough. They are very important to understand our past. They are important to understand the human quest. They gave birth to the first forms of art. I was with my good friend, Dr. Lee Berger, National Geographic explorer, extraordinary paleoanthropologist. We were on the lounge room of the explorers at National Geographic headquarters in Washington. And we were looking at a map of the world, just as one I have right in front of me. This National Geographic map, which is amazing. And we were talking about, hey, let's go mapping the underground. This is so important because some of the most important discoveries have come from there. And if we want to understand our own humanity, if we want to understand our evolution, we have to look into caves. This is a good example. Dr. Lee Berger with Australopithecus sediva, one of the biggest discoveries of his career. Almost 2 million year old Australopithecus. It was one of many other important discoveries he made, like on the next slide we will see. Lee, a few years ago, 4 or 5, discovered this amazing specimen. It's an hominid. This hominid was so important for the evolution of humans, if Lee is right, that we are looking at a species that is not human, it's not a primate, it's something in between. But the very interesting aspect about this, even though its brain is not big enough, as traditional physical anthropology said, it looks like these things are doing burials. They are already depositing their death, and guess where? Inside a cave, inside a very, very small cave. If we could see the next one, we can see on the Rising Star Cave in South Africa. This is a representation from National Geographic. This specimen is doing burials already, and this is about 300,000 years old. This is not all. If you remember history, Neanderthal population used to do the first burials according to what we know so far. And we believe the first burial of Neanderthal happened some 100,000 years ago. Very recently, a group of French scientists discovered in Bruniquel Cave in France this amazing circle of stalactites and stalagmites that has been dated to 175,000 years old. 175,000 years old. They were Neanderthals there doing circles of stalactites and stalagmites for a purpose, for a reason, which I believe it was ritual. So what we're talking about here is the beginning of ritual, the beginning of religion of humans. Years after, some 30,000 years ago, the Chauvet Cave, also in France, was painted with amazing, amazing art. This is the lion's wall, which is one of the most exquisite art forms made by humans. And this happened 30,000 years ago. There's several explanations that we have been trying to give to this, but what I believe, this is sympathetic magic. They are trying to please the souls or the strength of the lions, or maybe they are trying to propitiate hunt, which take us once again to the beginning of religion. I don't find very crazy to say that very early humans in the Yucatan Peninsula also took caves for the inspiration. We see the very famous Cathergood and Stephens drawing, which is amazing, it's magical, it's beautiful. And we know it very well, but what we are seeing there is the 19th century depiction of a very important event. It was a huge drought in an area of Campeche where this cave is, and the population, the modern Maya, built this stairway in order to get to the very, very few drops of water in the bottom, which tell us about survivalism, which tell us about the importance of life in caves. After that, in the 19th century still, a very important researcher, can we see the next one, please? Well, this is a book that we all have read, all archaeologists, Hill Caves of Yucatan, Henry Mercer. Henry Mercer was looking for very early humans. His hypothesis was there must be remains of early humans in the Yucatan caves. And a lot of people laugh about it. The problem with Mercer, he was amazing, but the problem was that he didn't have scuba diving equipment. If he had that equipment, he had realized that he was right, because on the flooded caves of Yucatan, we had discovered some of the most early humans that arrived to this area. Years after, Mr. Edward Thompson, he was on the consulate of the United States in Progreso, Yucatan, and he's a very polemic man, but he had good things. There is an amazing cave in Yucatan called Loltun. George mentioned that cave a few minutes ago. It's amazing. Well, would you believe that the only map we have from Loltun Cave was made by this man in the end of the 19th century? So he was a real explorer with a different perspective of science and archaeology, which was something that was just beginning to form. Next one, please, Carla. Thompson explored this amazing cave of Loltun. If you don't know it, for all of you in Yucatan, I know there's a lot of people from Yucatan looking at us. And some people in Yucatan, some Yucatecos don't know this amazing cave, which is there. You should go there and get wondered about this beautiful, important cave and understand the importance of caves in the development of culture in our area. So I have been talking to you about millions of years ago with Sediba, 2 million years ago, and now we are in the Mayan area and we still have material to research. Very recently, in the 1938 year, Eric Thompson, another Thompson, wrote this article about Edward Thompson. They were not related. They just had the same name. And we learned that Edward had explored the high priest temple in Chichen Itza that now we know as El Osario. El Osario, it's an amazing place because it has a very important feature. It was built over a cave. And now we realize and we understand and we had come to learn that most temples are related to caves or cenotes, especially in Chichen Itza, especially El Osario and El Castillo. We all know that El Castillo it's being built over a cenote or a cave. The problem is that we have not found the key to go in there, open the door, and dive. But let me tell you, we're looking very, very hard for it. And I hope that soon we will be able to do so. Now, how do we organize all our knowledge? How do we start learning what's down there? We know that there's at the very least, 10,000 caves and cenotes in the Yucatan Peninsula. And I think that this is a very conservative number. So we need a methodology, especially archaeologically speaking. For us archaeologists, we have discovered amazing things under the ground. And our colleagues on the surface sometimes are a little jealous of us because the materials are perfectly well preserved. So we need a good method to do that. We need a good method to learn. This man that you are looking here in the photograph is my other mentor, my dear friend, Dr. Jim Brady, a professor at the University, California State University in Los Angeles. And Jim just developed the methodology and theory to study caves. Some of us are following him, and we are proposing new theories and new things, and we are trying to enrich the knowledge. But Jim had many qualities. One of them is that he is the first archaeologist researching very seriously, formally, a cave, the Nachtunich cave in Guatemala. An amazing cave full of paints, an amazing cave full of modifications, burials, you name it. It's not only beautiful and huge, but it's a cave that it contains treasures of knowledge. And Jim and his colleagues, Dr. George Denny, among others, like Alan Cobb, study that cave and make it possible for National Geographic to pay attention to Mesoamerican caves. And the first cover of a cave of National Geographic magazine in August of 1981 was dedicated to the Nachtunich cave. This happened thanks to Jim, George, Alan, Andrea Stone, all these dear friends that are very close to us, except for Andrea, who passed away a few years ago. But we were close when she was alive. Anyway, Jim is responsible of most of our new theories and ideas about caves and how we interpret them. Next one, please. Okay, you saw that very ancient 175,000 years old circle of Neanderthals in Runikel Cave. Well, the Mayan area, 174,000 years after, some Maya are doing the same inside a cave. This is like universal knowledge. This is like appropriation of the cave, the spiritual part of the cave, and making for a reason circles that contain energy or represent something that unfortunately we don't know yet what it is, but we are studying that. It's a very complex field of study, because we are dealing here with ideas that are not longer here. We can see the remains, but how can we make an interpretation of that? What did they feel? Why they think? That's the very hard part of archaeology. This is the moment when we want to go back in a time machine and be able to talk to them and see what they think about that, and why they do that. Like all these representations, I'm sure you can see. This is my good friend Marty O'Farrell, an amazing photograph from Carla Ortega. We have to recognize that photograph. And we are looking at some faces, some mysterious faces in the wall, carved on stalactites. What are they representing? They are maybe guards. Maybe they are guarding the entrance to the water, which is right there. But who made them? Were they made by early humans 10, 15,000 years ago, or by the Maya? This is some of the few, or many, I'm sorry, of the many mysteries that we have to solve still. So there's still a lot to do, research, and think about our caves. But as you can see now, I believe that the importance of caves in Karst is more than evident with all these examples that we are presenting. Next, we're going to see another very beautiful carved face. It's actually a head of a character. It looks almost like a skull, and it's right by a stairway. Of course, this is a ceremonial place. We believe, the next one, please. And we believe that, thank you, this is Maya. And these two caves are very close to each other. So maybe they are sharing thousands of years of rituals, of presence of humans, of religion. This is one of our most hard quests, understand the origin of religion. And of course, diving in caves, diving in cenotes. What an amazing experience. This is, of course, my life goal. And I'm a very lucky guy. I tell that all the time, and I have the coolest job in the world. I can dive, I can go to caves, I can do rappel, I can do science, I can do adventure, I can do exploration, and have a very good time. So we have a lot of work to do, and we know that our lifetime is not going to be enough to understand these amazing places. So our grandchildren and the sons of our grandchildren, if we protect and preserve all these areas, they're going to be able to research there. As you can see, it's like the Everest of cave diving. This is thousands and thousands and thousands of flooded caves. Our project 3 years ago had the honor, the privilege of connecting the two systems of Zacactún and Dos Ojos, having the longest flooded cave in the world. It's now about 370 kilometers, according to Rob Schmittner, the guy that did the connection, that used to do a lot of the work here. So what could be better than being underwater in this amazing place? You know, you are in another planet. You need a special equipment to survive on that planet. If we go very early, we can dive. We can enter 1 or 2 kilometers into a cave, get to where probably nobody has been before, and be in time for dinner at home. And the paths that we see in these caves are amazing, like this Sac Bay that we found in Yucatan. This is an amazing picture from Paul Nicklin. My good friend Paul, as you can see, is one of the most talented photographers in the world. And I'm walking on a Sac Bay, a white road that goes into the heart of Earth that you have to get in by diving. Next, please. So let me tell you about some of our biggest discoveries. This is one of the first dives we did in Holtun cenote in Chichen Itza. Holtun is amazing for several reasons, one of them being the fact that we found an offering of different objects, hundreds of objects, human remains, jade, animals, you name it, at about 10 meters below. So we learn a lot about the karst and how it behaves on drought eras or drought times. Our good friends David Hodel and Mark Brenner had studied the droughts in the area, and they told us, yeah, on the 10th century there was a huge drought, and we believe this is evidence of that. What you're seeing there is one of our first exploration dives. Let me tell you, I went there with a single tank and a solo dive because we were working in the jungle. We just needed to go quickly and see if it was worth it. And after that, we had made super important efforts. It's one of the cenotes that we have dived the most, along with San Antonio cenote. So that single dive with a single tank on solo, it became a matter of research through all these years. As you can see, sometimes we need heavy equipment. Next, please. And the operation gets a little complicated when we have several divers doing the research, but it's always fun and amazing. So to end my talk, I'm sorry I take a lot of time, as usual, sorry. Let me tell you about this amazing place, Holtun cenote, which has light entrance, which is amazing. And after taking several pictures, we realized that that light entrance was propitiated by an intentional cut of the entrance on a square, just like the form of the Mesoamerican universe. And on a given day of the zenithal passage of the sun in May and July, we have an amazing entrance of light. And the picture is not here today, but Carla Ortega documented that on a very impressive way. If you go to our website, you can see that picture, which is really amazing. And next, please. Okay, this is part of the offering on a shelf of Holtun. I have talked about that several times. Next, please. And I have to give credit to all the team that helped us, especially Dr. George Benny. Dr. Benny helped us to understand the Karst, why it's in that particular shape, how can it goes in different directions. I mean, to have George on the field, it's really, really a lux. It's a luxury to have him here. The same as to have these very distinguished speleologists such as Alan Cobb, another good friend of ours. Alan, trying to explore the caves that are around the sacred cenote in Chichen Itza. There's lots of caves, and we are sure that there's archaeology there. Nobody had made any exploration there, so Alan volunteered to go there. Alan is not only very highly technical, prepared for all this, but he's very, very brave. He's a macho speleologist, and then he go down on his rope, and that same day that you're looking at this picture, he's hanging on his rope, and hundreds of African bees get around him. He get about 120, I believe, stings of African bees. He was on the therapy room for several hours, and very, very sore. We were all very scared, but fortunately, Alan got well. Alan got well soon, and he's ready to go there again, I hope, because we need to explore those caves. Next, please. Okay, so we respect very much the caves because the Maya still believe in the force of caves, still believe in spirits of the caves, still believe in the necessity to ask permission for caves. This is how important caves are. Caves have stayed in the mind of Maya for thousands of years. The modern, let's call them shamans, the shmenop, they pray to all the caves around the site when they do a ceremony like this one. When Don Jose made the ceremony that we're looking at, he was praying to all the caves in cenotes surrounding the cave of Balamku, which was the cave that this offering was made for. And Balamku, I'm just close with that, is one of the most amazing discoveries we have made. I had the fortune to be there with George and with G. Brady, with Alan Cobb a couple of years ago. We were going to be there last year, but everybody knows why we couldn't. This year, we're for sure going to be there again. And this is a picture of a beautiful Balamku inside. They say the very day that I got in there and I came back, and I was actually crying because I was thrilled. Next one, please. This is the one. They took pictures and video and stuff. But anyway, for me, it's a very, very emotional moment. I really was crying. I couldn't believe what I just saw, where I was. And I owe all that, the discoveries, the exploration, to being there, to all my team, which I really think to all the team, everybody, and especially the ones that were involved with the exploration of Balamku. This is one of the most iconic pictures from Balamku. This one has been around the world, actually in the New York Times, I believe, this picture. Anyway, I want to thank George for being here. Thank you very much, George. Thank you for being such a great fellow. Thanks for all your knowledge. Thanks for generosity to share with us. And here is part of the team of Balamku, Professor Arturo Bayona, PhD candidate Humberto Nation, yours truly, Dr. Jim Brady, Alan Cobb, and George Benny, just coming out from a cave. So I apologize for my hair because I was just coming out from a cave. I didn't have time to fix it. So thank you very much for your attention. And I hope there's a lot of questions that we could answer. Thanks a lot. Thanks, George.
Thank you, Guillermo. Thank you, as always. I feel like I'm hearing this for the first time, and I've heard this about 3-4 times already. So thank you. We have a video for you. Carla, by the way, Carla Ortega, she's the magician behind the technology around this production of live talks. So I want to thank Carla Ortega. She's also coordinator of communication for the Great Maya Aquifer, and she has a video for you to watch, and then we'll be back for the questions and answer session. Thank you, Guillermo. Thank you, Dr. George. We'll be back.
Gracias.
Thank you, Carla. Now I would like to bring back Dr. George and Dr. Guillermo, Jorge and Guillermo. Can you please come back to me, please? Thank you. So I want to start with my first question, and it comes from me because I really want to know, because I'm not a scientist or a speleologist, or I'm not an expert. So Dr. George, Jorge, how would you explain what karst is? Because it is the International Year of Caves and Karst. So we all know, or we think we know, what a cave is and what karst is, but there's many of us that don't know what karst is. So how would you explain karst?
That is a very important question, and thank you for asking that. Karst is a type of landscape. Much like mountains are a type of landscape, beaches are a type of landscape. The difference with karst is that karst is formed by primarily dissolving away the bedrock. When we think of mountains, we think of deep forces in the earth shoving the rock upward, and then rain falls and it cuts canyons, but down into the mountains or into the mountainside. But karst there is that mechanical erosion that happens, but it's primarily by water moving slowly into cracks, dissolving the crack, make it a little bit larger. Because it's a little bit larger, it can take more water. Because it can take more water, it dissolves a little bit more quickly. And eventually the process continues to accelerate. And if that crack becomes large enough for a person to go into it, we call it a cave. In many cases, at the surface, the crack will enlarge and widen and widen and widen and form a depression, a bowl-shaped depression called a sinkhole or a dolina, depending on what country you're in, that funnels water. There are other sinkholes that form by collapse into caves below. But karst is a landscape. That's the most important thing. Sometimes people will think, well, here's a rock and this is karst, or here's this spot or this feature. There are features in karst like sinkholes, like caves, big springs, but karst overall is a landscape. Caves, sinkholes, cenotes, underground streams, the world's largest springs. These are all typical features that we find in karst. Um, and so um, to just add a little bit to this, we're seeing a picture of water here. We just saw photos of divers swimming through the great Mayan aquifer. I've been swimming in many aquifers. The fact that we are not filtered out of these aquifers show how vulnerable it is. If I can easily go into and walk into and swim through an aquifer, then pollutants that are much smaller than me, bacteria, oils, grease, different chemicals, they can move through very easily as well. And karst aquifers are the most complicated in the world. They have no real filtration that occurs. They are the most vulnerable to contamination, as I've mentioned, and contaminants move at pretty good speeds, pretty fast rates from a contaminant source to a well or a spring or somebody's water supply. So we have to take extra care when we work in karst areas.
Thank you, Dr. George. Now I have a comment on. Yeah, it's from a lady called Liliana Viola. She wrote it in Spanish, but I quickly translated it to English, so I could read it out loud for you. Liliana Viola, thank you for your comment. Gracias por tu comentario, Liliana. She says, after living 18 years in Quintana Roo and explored caves for 11, our caves keep surprising me with their beauty and the archaeology that we find in them, even without looking. Because the Yucatan Peninsula is full of caves with archaeological elements. And she says that the caves are decorated with cenotes and underground rivers and skeletons, antique skeletons. So why, Dr. Jorge, why did you feel interest, or where did your interest for the Yucatan Peninsula came from, or when was the first time that you heard about these sites in Mexico?
Well, my first time was with Andrea Stone in 1986 when she was researching her book on Maya cave art, Images of the Underworld. And I knew that the Yucatan was a karst area. I'd heard of cenotes. Of course, everyone's heard of the cenote of sacrifice, at Chichen Itza. But I didn't know that much about it. I've long had an interest in archaeology, and so anyway, with working with Andrea and then with Jim Brady, I had the opportunity to develop those skills and conduct many geoarchaeological investigations. And one of the things that I enjoy about working in caves is that it's multidisciplinary. The archaeology has taught me a lot about the geology, has taught me a lot about the hydrology. Also, the biology has taught me has taught me a lot about geology and biology. We have the stalactites, the stalagmites, the mud, the dirt on the cave floor. We don't think about that. We just think, well, it's dirt, it's just mud, it's nothing. It's incredibly rich with scientific information about the past climates, who lived there, the plants, the animals that were on the surface. And so all of this connects together to give us a rich picture of what life was like for past people who lived there, and also even before people. So people who study climates, paleoclimates, have realized that the most important records of past climate in the world is to be found in caves because of the diversity of information that occurs, but also you can find it easily. There's great work that's been done looking at the ice cores from Greenland, looking at ice cores from Antarctica. There's great work that's been done with deep sea cores. But that information is telling you specifically what's happening at the North and South Pole and in the middle of the ocean. But these stalactites that we're seeing, these images that we're seeing here, we can find out what's happened in our home, where we live. And with caves scattered around the country, around the continents, we can get multiple samples from these sites to develop the most complicated, the most complete pictures of past climates in the world. And then with that information, we can move forward to better understand the effects of climate change that we have now and how that will move ahead with continued output of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases into the atmosphere.
Comment from Yanes Alfredo, and he says, "Saludos, George and Guillermo. Greetings. The natural history of the Yucatan Peninsula is impressive. What are the new exploration projects in the caves of the Yucatan Peninsula, and what sites are yet to be discovered?" This is a question for you both, so maybe you should both come back, Guillermo. Thank you. So I'll say it again. The natural history of the Yucatan Peninsula is impressive. What are the new exploration projects in the caves of the Yucatan Peninsula, and what sites are yet to be discovered? Thank you for this question, Alfredo.
Alfredo, I believe George said something that impressed me a lot when he was talking about Kawa Cave. He said we need to go beyond where the point where the Maya went, and we know they went very far away. So even on the places that we have explored, that we believe that we know, that we believe are completely mapped, I think we will discover many other features, many other passageways. I think there's lots to be discovered, even on the caves that we know already. But there's also an important part, and I know, Alfredo, that you know very well. We at the Karst is not only caves, it's producing also important elements such as the stromatolites. And I believe this is quite an important field of research. And to understand the movement of water, we need to understand the flow of water. We need to understand a lot of things that we don't understand now. So, Alfredo, on the places that we already know, we still have to do a lot of research. Plus, there's still too many places to be discovered. I'm sure of that. I don't know what you think about it, George.
Yes, we don't know what we don't know, and I don't mean to just be joking about it. I would say there are probably thousands of caves in Yucatan that have yet to be discovered. But even with the ones that we know, there are we're learning new things every day. Technology is a great tool. When I've worked many times in the environmental area, I would look at a cave, and sometimes I would not find any significance to the cave. It may not have archaeological significance. It may not be biologically important or hydrologically important. And so, you can tell, the person who's developing it, putting in a road in or whatever, you say, yes, just cover it up, fill the cave. But what I've always advised is that whenever possible, protect the cave. Because again, we don't know what we don't know. 60 years ago, we were just learning to spell DNA. Think about all of the amazing things we are doing now with DNA, with genetics, that we didn't dream about 60 years ago. So what don't we know now that in 60 years will be important science, important information? And so it's easy to destroy something. But if we can find a way, we can't protect everything. I understand that, of course. But if we can find a way to protect as much as we can, then I think we're protecting our future in many ways. Um, so even with caves that are well known, well traveled, don't say that someone's been there and the work is done. I think there's a lot more work still to be done with many of the caves. One of the projects that I would love to see happen, and I'm looking for funding for this, and it's something that Guillermo was talking a little bit about, is I would like to do some geophysical studies of many of the temples in the Maya area to actually prove that caves exist under many of them. And there are certain special things I'm looking for as well, to understand which one. I don't think every temple is going to have a cave under it, but I think certain ones will, and I think there may be ways of identifying which ones do. Um, Many of these temples were also built not because the cave made the temple sacred. It wasn't the temple that was sacred, but the cave made it holy. So this was very important in the design and layout of Maya communities. So that's one project I would love to do, and I'm looking for funding to support that. But I think more critically important right now for Yucatan is to protect the cave and karst environment. Um, there are many challenges that are happening. The area is growing, the population is growing, the risk to groundwater contamination is growing, but also will there be enough water, fresh water for people? The Yucatan aquifer is it's a very broad aquifer, but it's not very deep. At least the fresh water is not very deep. So I'm concerned about that. In the next 50 years or more, we know sea level's rising. And as sea level rises, these large caves that connect to the sea, that salt water is going to move a long way inside into the land and contaminate fresh water with salt water. So I'm very concerned about that. So I think culturally, I'm fascinated. I would love to do more geoarchaeological work, but I would say the number one priority for the people of Mexico, for the states of Campeche, Quintana Roo, and Yucatan, is to understand their karst environment and to take the best measures that they can to protect it. I'm not saying that you can't do anything in karst. In general, I recommend if you're looking at developing something in the karst area, avoid it. Avoid the karst if you can. In some areas, you can't. You can't tell everyone, okay, everyone needs to move out of the Yucatan Peninsula. That's crazy. That's not possible. But we need to think about these resources because they benefit us. And so we need to think about that they have special needs. They require special expertise to study them, to manage them. When I was a consultant, I cleaned up the messes of some other consultants. They were good people. They were smart people. They just weren't trained in karst. So don't hire me. Don't ask me to drill an oil well for you. I don't know how to do that. I'm a geologist, but I'm not a petroleum geologist. But when it comes to karst, yeah, I understand that. So find the right people with the right expertise to really study and protect these tremendous resources that are there in Yucatan.
Thank you, Dr. George. Speaking of protecting and looking after these sites, I have another question again from Liliana Viola. She says, some countries ban people from caves and only allow them to be used by scientists. Here in the Yucatan Peninsula, anyone can map, dive, take archaeology from them. So what do you think that we should do to protect the caves that are a time machine? That I love that part. They are actually a time machine, full of knowledge from human beings to protect them for future generations. What would you say to that, Dr. George?
First, just a comment I should have made earlier that I apologize that my Spanish is terrible. I don't speak it nearly enough. Oftentimes I'll say, mi español es muy peligroso.
I love
And I got that from a friend of mine, Tom Miller, who's one of the people I worked with in the Chiquibul. So I wish I could speak Spanish more fluently. But that's an important question, though. Exploration can be done safely, properly, and carefully by people who are not scientists. Most of what we know about caves are coming from cave explorers. I started my career as a cave explorer when many times cave explorers don't recognize their value. They'll say, well, I'm just mapping the cave. I want to see where it goes. As a geologist, I look at the cave and I'm seeing the structure of the aquifer. I'm seeing the plumbing of the groundwater system, of how that works. A biologist, a cave biologist will look and see, okay, I can see the various ecological zones here. An archaeologist can look at it and look at different cultural patterns where we might expect cultural materials to occur in the cave. And so most cavers that I know of are incredibly careful when they go into caves. We've learned a lot. I know that my caving and cavers that I've grown with were far more careful just because we've learned, and we've passed that knowledge to young cavers now. So there's a challenge between trying to protect something, but then there's also the challenge of protecting what you don't know. And there's a balance. And so you can't protect what you don't know. So we can say, well, no one's going to go into this cave because, unless they're a scientist, because they may do damage. Well, but there's not enough scientists. And so because the cave has not been explored, has not been studied, then there could be some other harm, greater harm to the cave. Someone might put a gas station on top of it. Who knows? I'm just making things up here. Many bad things can happen. So it's a balance, and so I think cave exploration is important, but it's important to be done carefully to minimize our impact. There's the U.S. National Speleological Society would say for many years said, take nothing but pictures, leave nothing but footprints, and kill nothing but time. We've changed that because we don't want to leave footprints behind now, because footprints are an impact. So we would now want to leave no trace. So we're trying to refine our way to do this as safely and as best for the caves and karst as possible. Good
Thank
question.
you, Dr. George. And speaking of that, I remember watching a video of you and Guillermo, who just joined us, and you're both having a discussion on a super small cave with very little space between the floor and the ceiling, if you can call it like that. So what do you discuss when you are in this kind of meeting office underground with so little space? What goes through your mind? With
Memo, when's the last time you took a shower? You really smell bad. George, no, you smell worse.
Yes, something online. George was looking at this very, very tiny passageway, and then there was Alan Cobb there, and Alan said, "No, I cannot fit there at all." I didn't even volunteer. So what George said was, maybe Arturo, referring to a dear Professor Arturo Bayona, who's very, very skinny. So this is what we're discussing. Who can go in there to find out what is there?
No.
And what did you find? Did he go? Did Arturo go?
Arturo had not go there yet, but he's going to go. If he's around, Arturo, you're going to be there soon.
Yeah, because it's a small hole inside a cave. And
yes.
So
but
what would you like to share with people that don't have access? Sorry,
okay.
Dr.
Well, seriously, I don't remember. I didn't see the video. So I don't know what you're talking about. But my point of joking, and saying that, we smell bad, and sometimes, it's hot, you sweat, but we're people.
We
And
do.
so we're not always there being strict scientists and serious. We have fun. We tell jokes. Again, we're doing this with our good friends. Alan and I have been friends for, I think, 40 years. Alan Cobb. And so we have fun together. It's one of the things that we really enjoy about doing this. So sometimes it's a mix. We'll have fun, we'll joke, but then we see something, we stop. Wait a minute, what's this? What do you think? And so it's a mix of information.
So I'm hoping that young generations are watching us, that some teenager somewhere around the globe is listening your stories and your experiences. What would you like to say to the young generations about what you do for a living? And I don't know, how to inspire people to protect these sites. Oh,
It's Memo, do you want to go first?
I can go ahead.
yes, go then, go.
What I would say is do what you love, because that's the way to enjoy what you do. And I think George and myself and Alan and Jim Brady and had found that the underworld, the underground, is so fascinating. And as George just said, it's full of different aspects. And I mean, we need hundreds of years to end researching all this. We need several generations, and maybe they are not going to end doing it. This is why it's so important to preserve it, because it's much easier to destroy it, and which is happening in some areas, unfortunately. So I would say this is why we are so passionate about our work, because we really love that, and we love the mystery of the caves, of the realm of darkness. So I would say, yeah, if you do what you love, you will enjoy it.
Thank you, Guillermo. George?
One of the things, people talk to me about the International Year, and they ask, when do I expect things to change? What impact will the International Year have? And I expect that we'll see some changes, the better education, better knowledge about caves and karst in 2, 3, 5 years. But the big changes that I'm looking forward to are going to happen in 20, 30, 40, even 50 years or further. Um, I'm looking forward to little girls, little boys today who will grow up and become the next Guillermo de Anda, who will become the next president of the UIS, who will become the next scientists. But beyond that, not everyone's going to become a cave scientist or a cave explorer. They will be making decisions about business, about life. Some may be in the government and say, I have a decision to make about protecting this karst area, protecting our environment. And I remember learning when I was a child that caves are important, that karst is important. So let's take some extra steps to protect those areas. And so I think of many of the benefits are going to come over the years. Additionally, one thing that I would ask everyone to think about, I don't know how it's described in Spanish. I think it's the same as we do in English. In English, we'll talk about the environment. Something's going to happen to the environment. This was bad for the environment. I hate that term. It's our environment. Words have power. If I say that the house burned down, we would say, well, yeah, I'm sorry for the people who live there. But if I said our house burned down, then suddenly it's important. It's our house. It's our environment. Caves, karst, they're part of our environment. They affect us. They're not something separate. It's not the environment that's separate. It's our environment. We're connected to it. And so whether someone becomes a cave explorer, a cave scientist, works in government, or is just someone who enjoys the outdoors and trying to decide who to vote for, what decisions how they want their government, their community to proceed in different ways. That's all valuable. So that's why we want people to understand about caves in Karst.
One last question, because we are running out of time. Gustavo Costa, he's another ambassador for the Great Maya Aquifer. Hola, Gustavo. Thank you for joining us. Gustavo says, what would you say to Mexicans, especially Mexican authorities, about this system to make them try harder to protect them? Thank you, Gustavo.
This is difficult, and the reason is, I'm a gringo. Okay, who am I to tell the Mexican people and the Mexican government what to do? Okay, so I want to be careful. I don't want to sound insulting, because that's not my goal. I think the most important thing is to teach people that something is important, and then they discover it for themselves. They realize for themselves how important it is, and because none of us can force anyone to do something. But if that person understands that something is important, then they do it themselves automatically. So in Yucatan, water. Where are you getting your water from? You're getting it from, the Great Maya Aquifer. You're getting it from the Karst Aquifer. So you want to protect your water supply. I don't know any person who doesn't need water, who doesn't need clean water. So that's the first thing. The water, of course, is protecting our environment in many ways, our ecology, the animal species, the plant species. Certainly, why are millions of people coming to Yucatan each year? Yes, they're enjoying the beaches of the great Riviera Maya, as it's called, along the Caribbean coast, but they're coming to see these great cultural resources as well. And there's so much more that can be learned and studied and protected. So there are many, many, many resources. And to protect ourselves, again, sea level's rising. So what happens in 50 years? Much of the Yucatan coast is going to be underwater. I don't know how much, half a meter, maybe more. The projections from the experts change. And so by studying and understanding, again, we can protect ourselves far better than without any knowledge.
Well, it's time. I don't know if Guillermo wants to say something about this, or
I was going to say exactly, or very, very similar to what George said. There's three things to do that we start doing: education, education, and education. And this is why I believe these projects are so important. It's so important to have these talks and let the people know what we do, why we do it, why it's important. And that's the importance of a beautiful picture. They're not only pretty to enjoy, but they teach. You can learn from it. It can inspire you. So I believe this is one of our main goals, to tell everybody how beautiful, important, and vulnerable resource is all the underground, all the karst area. So in this year of caves and karst, we should super emphasize that and try to get to as many people as we can. I think this is the best we can do, Gustavo. And you have a important role on that with your photographs. So yeah, let's keep working. Let's keep the woodwork, and let's try to get to as many people as we can. That's the thing. That's much better than anything else.
Yes. Thank you, Guillermo. I think that the more we share these talks with people around us on our social media, the more people will be aware of the importance of these sites. So saying this, I want to read for you out loud some comments from people that are watching you. The first one is from Juan Luis Martinez, so we can wrap it up. He says, amazing and spectacular conference. Congratulations for both Dr. De Anda and Dr. Benny. And also congrats to Carla number 1 and Carla number 2. Carla number 2, by the way. And thank you, Juan Luis. by the way, Juan Luis, he's the expert that, can you tell people who Juan Luis is, Guillermo? Because I don't want to.
Juan Luis is one of the
Rope?
best rope experts in Mexico, and he's an amazing safety man on ropes. So it's the Great Maya Aquifer project, safe specialist on ropes. And Juan Luis, I hope you recover very, very, very soon. I know you're doing much better every day.
We love you.
Yeah.
Then Araiza Adame says, thank you, Memo. Becky Munguia says, how amazing. Congratulations to all. Becky Munguia also says, saludos, Memo, desde Ciudad de México. Greetings from Mexico City. There's people watching us also. Sorry, I saw this comment from greetings from Cal State, LA. Pleasure to hear you speak, Brian Waldo.
All right, Brian, how are you?
Thank you, Brian. And Rodrigo Navarro, he's saying a hug from Cozumel, Mexico. So beautiful, Cozumel. Saludos, Rodrigo, hasta Cozumel. To thank you all and just to say goodbye, I want to remind everyone that we are going to be taking part of this celebration all year long. So at the Great Maya Aquifer, every Tuesday, we are going to be live on Instagram. So please make sure that you start following us on Instagram. You can find us as @Proyecto GAM. So you can see more about Karst and caves and underground caves on these special talks live on Instagram. Every Tuesday at 7 p.m. We started giving talks on Facebook, but now we're going to move to Instagram. I'm going to speak now in Spanish quickly. Muchas gracias a todos los que nos acompañaron como cada martes desde hace muchos meses, ya casi un año, en estas conferencias en línea. Como queremos celebrar este año internacional de las cuevas y el Karst, decidimos hacer conferencias virtuales, pero ahora las vamos a hacer en Instagram. Así que, por favor, asegúrense de seguirnos en nuestra cuenta en Instagram. Nos encuentran como @proyectogam y ahí van a ver expertos tanto en espeleología como en cartografía, como fotografía, videografía, arqueología. Entonces, pues este año las cuevas no solamente son estas formas en la tierra, tienen muchísimo que decirnos sobre animales, sobre arqueología, paleontología. Entonces los invitamos a que por favor se unan a nuestras redes en Instagram. Y bueno, una vez más agradecer. I would like to thank you again, Guillermo, and Dr. Benny, if you can come back to me, please, so that we can say goodbye. I just explained to our Spanish speakers that we are going to be live on Instagram. So that they can learn more about caves, because caves are not only these formations on our beautiful planet, they have inside lots to tell you about animals and paleontology, archaeology, and more. Anything you would like to say, Guillermo, before we say goodbye?
I want to thank everybody a lot. Lots of friends greeting our project, so I'm very glad. Estoy muy contento de todos los amigos que se unieron y que me mandan saludos. Saludos a todos ustedes también. De verdad es padrísimo poder estar en contacto.
Muchísimas gracias, Guillermo. Is Dr. Benny there or is he gone? Is he there? ¿Está ahí? ¿Toca ya? ¿Sí está? ¿No está? Creo que ya se fue. Pues bueno, les recuerdo que esta conferencia la vamos a subtitular en el español para que no se pierdan un solo detalle y puedan compartirla. Recuerden que tenemos muchas otras conferencias que pueden seguir disfrutando y compartiendo. Soy Carla Munguía Colmenero, embajadora del Gran Acuífero Maya. Ha sido un honor regresar y estar en esta conferencia y pues los esperamos en Instagram. Muchísimas gracias y que tengan muy bonita noche.